Hello everyone, welcome back to On the Fly. Today we're projecting the team that representing the United States of America at the 2025 Nations Faceoff. So before we get into it today, just a quick reminder that we will be going live tomorrow, December the 4th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Remember, 2 o'clock, both Finland and Sweden will come out, as well as 6:30, the United States and Canada, both those rosters. All four of those rosters will be out at those specific times. And at 7 o'clock, we will break down all of them right here on this YouTube channel. So be sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you're notified when we go live. But now let's talk about the big one, the United States of America. We've previewed already both Sweden and Finland. And now it's time for, in my opinion, it hurts me to say this. It pains me to say this. The favorite of this tournament, the United States, with the powerhouse, really. When you look at this team, top to bottom, there's really no areas of concern. You can look at the other teams, whether it's Finland, they have a couple holes. Sweden, sort of their depth kind of falls off after a while. Canada, it's their goaltending. The United States, top to bottom, this is a team that's going to contend. And I have to say, whoever's in charge of this team, you really can't mess this one up. So, with all that being said, let's take a look. Remember, so 6 players were selected back in June. Those 6 players were, of course, Austin Matthews, Jack Eichel, Matthew Tkachuk for the forwards. On the defensive side, Charlie McAvoy, Quinn Hughes, and Adam Fox. So those 6 players are already officially on the Nations USA team. Now, let's go to my predictions of who else will be filling out this roster. Starting with the forwards, we have Brady Tkachuk joining his brother Matthew, JT Miller, Kyle Connor, Dylan Larkin, Jack Hughes, Jason Robertson, Jake Gensel, Clayton Keller, Matt Boldy, and Tage Thompson. Some notable names that I kind of left out here. One of them is Cole Caulfield. I mean, looking at this team, it's hard to find a spot for Caulfield to go. I see sort of Clayton Keller is the bumper guy in here. So other guys include, guys like Vincent Trocheck. Chris Kreider is another name that might sort of pop in there. But I think at the end of the day, Keller, just what we've seen from him this year, he's earned his spot on this team. And I'll be interested to see, whether or not he's able to find his game similar to what he's been doing in Utah. But we'll see. Obviously lots of time still to go with 2 months out before the tournament actually gets underway. So we'll see who ends up developing that hot hand. It's obviously you sort of pick players based on what they've done in the early part of the season, but we still have an entire 2 months to go before the midpoint of the season where you're like, okay, that player's still good or that player's even better now. So we'll see who ends up riding that hot hand. But I think just what we've seen so far this year, as much as it sucks, Trocheck, Kreider, sort of those 2 staples on an American roster, in my eyes, just don't make it in this. And Kreider especially, that's a tough one. But just what we've seen from him this year, I don't think he has quite the skill level of these other players. And I think at the end of the day, it's a tough game, right? Because there's only 23 spots on a lineup, 13 forwards. Eventually someone's left out. So Kreider, Caulfield, Trocheck are the 3 that I'm sort of are on that bubble that could very well make it. But I think Clayton Keller is going to be that bumper guy that's going to knock all those 3 guys out. But we'll move on now to the defensemen. So we still have the 3, McAvoy, Hughes, and Fox, already officially on the team. The next other 4 that are my predictions are Slavin, Werenski, Faber, and Carlson. For me, I think those 4, I'm going to say the 3 are a lock with Slavin, Werenski, and Faber. And then I think Carlson is one of those players that is a little bit on the outs, if you want to say that. But I think he's still probably about a 60% chance to get in. Looking at guys like Jake Sanderson from Ottawa, Noah Hannafin now from Vegas, I think those 2 guys are really the only ones that are going to give a guy like Carlson a run for his money. But I still think Carlson is probably about a 60% lock to make this team. It'll be interesting to see if anything else goes on there. Obviously, Sanderson and Hannafin both do not play with anyone currently on the team in terms of the defense core. So it's not about that sort of pre-built chemistry, and neither is, of course, Carlson. So there's no sort of pre-built chemistry and team alliances that is going to really impact this decision in terms of the defense. But I do think that this is still a very solid defense core and probably one of the best at this tournament. Looking at the other teams, I think when you have the firepower that the forwards have, there's not a single blemish in that forward group. You look at the defense, there's not a single hole in the defense group. And when we look at the goalies here, which we'll display now with Hellebuck, Ottinger, Swayman, is the three that I'm going to pick. Unfortunately, Thatcher Demko is the fourth one out. And the only reason why I'm taking him out is because of the injury. And I think, if he isn't injured right now, I think there is definitely a world where a guy like Swayman gets replaced by Demko. Just what we've seen from him this year. Swayman hasn't had a great start to the season, and I think that very well might have been enough to knock him out of that third spot for this Four Nations roster. But due to the injury to Demko, no real end in sight on that one. I do think that Hellebuck's going to be the number one starter there. Ottinger, in my eyes, will be number two, and then Swayman, I think, will be the third goalie, sort of to play a backup role if anything happens. And one more thing on that is, of course, there's also injuries that you got to take note of, right? And you can pick a player now, and if he gets hurt between, this December 4th and February 12th or whenever this tournament starts, anywhere in that range, say January 14th, someone gets hurt, you're able to substitute out that player, which very well might be the case for any four of these goalies, right? Where you have a very tight four-way race for that starting spot. And we'll see, once again, sort of how that 2 months is going to progress, right? Because as much as it's great, you have your roster 2 months in advance, now it's about who's going to start. And especially in net, you really want to ride that hot hand. Obviously, Hellebuck's been great so far in the season, but then the next question becomes, a guy like Ottinger, is he going to get hot in, say, January? And all of a sudden it's, okay, we might start him. Or Swayman gets really hot in January, we're going to start him. And that's how this is going to, in my eyes, it's going to go, especially with a lot of these teams' goaltending situations where you really don't have a number one. I think Canada is going to be a very prime example of that. And we'll talk about that one tomorrow in our projection video. But at the same time, it's a very tight race for that starting spot. And I think at the end of the day, it's going to come down to who's hot. And if all three goalies are hot, I think Hellebuck's going to be the one to take it, just because of what we've seen from him. That guarantee that we've seen from him throughout these years of constant, steady performances, and he's a workhorse. I think that's going to be the trick. And I think they will sort of tandem it out, especially in those round-robin games. The U.S. has enough firepower to get themselves through. Teams like a Finland, maybe a Sweden as well, just enough. But also for Canada, I think you look to who's going to be your number one starter, and that's going to be the goalie that plays against Canada. And I think, in my eyes, it's going to be Hellebuck, or I think it might even be a guy like Ottinger. And I don't know if Swayman would be the guy, but you never know, right? And same with Demko. Demko magically heals and comes back, and maybe the U.S. team knows about that. That might be where the line gets drawn. But when you look at this team, between the forwards, who in my eyes are probably either best or second best behind Canada, the defense, which in my eyes are probably best or second best, or if you want to say third best, I don't think it's third best, but I'd say probably second best behind Sweden, and then the goaltending, which in my eyes is the best we'll have at this tournament. So between all the favorites in the categories, I have to say this U.S. team is a scary looking team, and it's going to be very interesting to see what they can do. If you made it this far in the video, thank you for watching. If you'd like to drop a like, if you really like subscribing, tell all your friends. Let me know down below your thoughts on Team USA. Until next time, see you.